April 14th, 1912, 11:39 p.m. A lookout spots something in the darkness ahead. He rings the warning bell 3 times and shouts into the telephone, "Iceberg, right ahead." The officers have 37 seconds to react. In less than 3 hours, 1,500 people will be dead in the freezing Atlantic. This is the story of how the world's most advanced ship became history's most infamous disaster. But before we dive into that night, ask yourself this. What would you do if you had only 2 hours to live and you knew it? Would you help others? Would you fight for survival? Or would you simply accept your fate? The passengers of the Titanic faced exactly that choice. And what they did in those final moments reveals everything about human nature under extreme pressure. If you're fascinated by history's most dramatic moments, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you deeply researched disaster stories every Tuesday and Saturday. Now, let's go back to April 10th, 1912. The Titanic wasn't just a ship. It was a floating palace, a symbol of human achievement at the peak of the industrial age. 900 feet long, 11 stories high, 46,000 tons of steel and ambition. First-class passengers paid the equivalent of $60,000 today for suites with private promenades. They dined on 10-course meals in gilded dining rooms. Third-class passengers paid $90, roughly $3,000 today, for the chance at a new life in America. The ship's designers called it unsinkable. Advanced watertight compartments could seal off damage. Even if 4 compartments flooded, the ship would stay afloat. They had thought of everything. Or so they believed. On April 14th, the Titanic received 6 warnings about ice ahead. Captain Edward Smith acknowledged them, but didn't slow down. The ship was traveling at 22 knots, nearly top speed, through a known ice field. Why? Because wealthy passengers wanted to arrive in New York early. Because the White Star Line wanted publicity. Because everyone believed the ship was unsinkable. At 11:39 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet spotted the iceberg. He rang the bell. He called the bridge. The officers ordered hard to starboard and engines reversed. The Titanic needed half a mile to turn. The iceberg was 500 yards away. 37 seconds. That's all the time they had. The ship turned, but not enough. The iceberg scraped along the starboard side for 7 seconds, opening a 300-foot gash below the waterline. Most passengers barely felt it. A slight grinding sensation, nothing more. Some thought the propeller had dropped. Others went on deck and played with chunks of ice that had fallen onto the ship. They joked about it. They had no idea what was happening below. Water was flooding into 6 compartments. The ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, was on board. He did the calculations in minutes. The Titanic could survive 4 flooded compartments, maybe 5. But 6? He told Captain Smith directly. The ship has 2 hours, 2.5 at most. The unsinkable ship had just received its death sentence. Captain Smith ordered the lifeboats uncovered at 12:05 a.m. But here's where human arrogance turned disaster into massacre. The Titanic carried lifeboats for 1,200 people. There were 2,200 aboard. The regulations hadn't kept pace with ship size. Even worse, many lifeboats launched half empty. The first lifeboat had capacity for 65 people. It left with 28. Why? Because wealthy first-class passengers refused to believe the ship could sink. Women refused to leave their husbands. People thought it was safer to stay on the big ship than get into a small boat in the freezing night. Meanwhile, third-class passengers couldn't even reach the boat deck. Gates kept them trapped below while water rose around their feet. By 1:15 a.m., the bow was underwater. The ship's angle grew steeper. Furniture crashed through walls. People clung to railings as the deck became a slope, then a cliff. The ship's band played ragtime, then hymns, trying to keep panic at bay. At 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat left. Over 1,500 people were still on board. They crowded toward the stern as the bow sank deeper. Some jumped into the water, others prayed. The ship's officers fired pistols into the air to control the desperate crowds rushing the last boats. At 2:17 a.m. the lights failed, the ship plunged into darkness, people screamed. And then, with a sound survivors described as a monstrous roar, like thousands of dishes breaking at once, the Titanic broke in half. The bow section, flooded with water, sank immediately. The stern, momentarily freed from the weight, settled back onto the surface briefly before standing nearly vertical. For 30 seconds, it hung there, a black silhouette against the stars, hundreds of people clinging to the railings. Then it slid beneath the waves. 1,500 people were now in the water. The ocean temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit, below freezing. The human body can survive perhaps 15 minutes in water that cold. Most died within 5. Hypothermia shuts down your organs one by one. Your muscles stop working. Your mind becomes confused. You simply fall asleep and never wake up. The screams of the dying carried across the water for nearly an hour. Survivors in lifeboats heard them. Most refused to row back, afraid the drowning would swamp their boats. Only 2 lifeboats returned to search for survivors. They pulled 4 people from the water, 4 out of 1,500. At 4 a.m., the Carpathia arrived. The ship had raced through the same ice field at full speed, risking everything to reach the survivors. 706 people were rescued from lifeboats. 1,517 were dead. The youngest victim was 2 months old. The oldest was 80. Entire families vanished. The richest man in the world, John Jacob Astor, died giving his life jacket to a woman. The ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, was last seen staring at a painting in the first-class smoking room, accepting his fate. Captain Smith was never seen again after giving the order to abandon ship. The world was shocked. How could the unsinkable ship sink on its maiden voyage? The inquiries revealed a cascade of failures. Not enough lifeboats because regulations were outdated. Ice warnings ignored because of schedule pressure. The ship traveling too fast because wealthy passengers demanded it. Watertight compartments that weren't actually watertight at the top. A nearby ship, the Californian, just 10 miles away, had its radio turned off for the night and never heard the distress calls. They saw rockets being fired but assumed it was a celebration. Each small decision, each assumption of safety, each moment of human error compounded into catastrophe. The Titanic changed everything. Within months, new international regulations mandated lifeboats for every person aboard every ship. Ships were required to maintain 24-hour radio watches. The International Ice Patrol was created to monitor icebergs in the North Atlantic. In over a century of operation, not a single ship following their warnings has been lost to ice. The disaster also changed how we think about safety. We learned that bigger doesn't mean safer, that confidence can be deadly, that nature doesn't care about human engineering. The wreck of the Titanic lay undiscovered until 1985, resting 12,000 feet below the surface. When explorers finally found it, the ship had broken into 2 main pieces, exactly as survivors described. Personal belongings littered the ocean floor. Shoes, suitcases, jewelry, a doll's head, each item a silent witness to lives interrupted. The ship is now deteriorating, consumed by rust-eating bacteria. Within decades, it will collapse into the sediment. The physical ship will disappear, but the story will never die. The Titanic reminds us that human confidence can be deadly, that small decisions cascade into enormous consequences, that we're never as safe as we think we are. 1,500 people went into the cold Atlantic that night because people believed a ship could be unsinkable, because regulations lagged behind technology, because profit mattered more than safety. History struck at 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, 1912, and the world learned that nothing, not even our greatest creations, is immune to disaster. If this story made you think differently about history, smash that like button. Subscribe for more untold stories of when history strikes. What disaster should we cover next? Comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.